So we've got 4 items to cover off. One of them is going to be relatively familiar because we talk about what we've been up to every time, and so some of this is going to be recapping what we've previously discussed in other academies. But we've got our 2019 accomplishments, which is the features that we've delivered over the last 12 months, just in case you've missed any of those. I need to talk to you about our 20.00 release, which is going to be the release coming towards the end of the year, in which the changes that Richard discussed earlier, the breaking changes around Symfony and jQuery and accessibility changes are going to be delivered. We also have a quick update on our roadmap and a discussion of multimedia. I won't give that one away. We'll get to there in a second. So, 2019 accomplishments. So, I'm sure a lot of you have seen. This year we put a lot of effort into our Cluedo search partner. There is a new integration page. We've added progressively over the course of the year features to our search implementation to support more of their functionality. There are still some gaps, so if you are going to go with them, come and have a chat with us before you do it. But moving quickly on, we've then done our menu manager. So that's currently in beta, and that's a new way for managing our navigation within the CMS. So most people's sites at the moment will be managed through dynamically populated categories, which then produce dynamically populated pages of links according to what you've assigned to those categories. And this was looking at providing you guys tools to manage those in a more intuitive way, being able to curate those links, reorder them, rename them, and tailor your specific content around navigation to its purpose and functionality around navigation. It's still in beta at the moment, and we'd appreciate any feedback from anybody who's had a chance to, have a go at it. There are some features that we want to add into there as well before we release it, largely around being able to add imagery and descriptions to categories so that you can supplement your navigation structure with additional content and links. There has been in the past surveys about this. I'll send one more about any feedback coming out of the beta, but I'd really appreciate if you haven't taken the time turning it on your UAT site and having a bit of a click around. I'd really appreciate your feedback. We reworked our event calendar repeat functionality, which has been variously referred to as event recurrence as well. And largely this was around providing an additional option requested via our feature requests to support being able to reference events happening multiple times a week. So previously you could only say this event happens every week on a Tuesday, and now you can say, well, actually it happens every Tuesday and Thursday without having multiple events. We also looked at that point at the performance of our event calendar, because we were finding that some customers were finding it would slow down their site if they had an awful lot of events. So to support going forward a much better performance, a much better experience for our customers, we've reworked that code. It works much better now. You can also do things like if you've got an event that's going to be happening every Monday, and this year it just so happens that Christmas Day falls on a Monday, and nobody at the council has volunteered to turn up at the local library on Christmas Day, you can take that day off without having to go in and kind of create multiple events and have one finishing the Monday before Christmas and then one starting the Monday after Christmas. You can just take it out and put in a new event, a new date for that particular event. We have our API in Galaxies, which is, as Suraj mentioned, part of our strategy going forward is to make Galaxies like an equal partner with the rest of the CMS. So where there isn't functionality that is currently available in Galaxies, making that functionality available in Galaxies. One of the big modules that we added this year was support for the customer-facing API, so that you could, if you've got a Galaxy, have the content from directory records on that Galaxy made available to third parties so that they can be pulled into aggregate apps of, I know that there are some people who have apps out there that will show you a map with all the different kind of green spaces around the place, and that's powered by directories, and it's populated via the API. And then we've discussed earlier the reworking of our Photon designs. like from Edinburgh mentioned this as part of the responsive Galaxy designs that they were hoping to work on. We have reimagined the Galaxy Designer, taken out a lot of the default options so that themes from this point onwards will be able to define how you interact with them. And although it cuts down on the global options, it means that we can offer you more powerful options per theme. More work happening with that over the coming year. And then again, workflow comments, which was one of our big changes, again coming from our feature requests. So a lot of these have been driven by changes coming from our customers via feature requests. I know sometimes it feels like we don't talk about those an awful lot. Oh, heck. You didn't see that. Close your eyes. Okay, going back. The workflow comments was something that consistently came up that people wanted to be, because if you have got a devolved organisation, the person who is approving the content, the person who is submitting the content may not be in the same building, may not be talking to each other on a daily basis, and you'd rather not have duplication of workflow actions with an email that helpfully explains, please look on page 5 where I've corrected a spelling mistake. So these workflow notifications now have comments in, and those comments form part of the audit trail for that document, so that in a year's time, when you need to go back and check on the rationale for a particular change being made, you can see the comments in situ and understand why something was approved, if it didn't meet your kind of global standards, or why it was submitted for approval in the first place. Which brings us on to our 20.00 release, which is a big one. So we've got our Symfony upgrade. We always want to keep you on our latest versions of our dependencies, because particularly as versions change, they fall out of security support. So we need to upgrade our Symfony 3.4 version. This will only affect you if you have a development team who are doing developments specifically using the Symfony library. And we're going to send some more notes to those customers on how they need to look at those custom devs that they've done and check that they're compatible. The jQuery free upgrade at the moment in the control center, we use a jQuery 1.x version, and we've had to stay on that version for quite a while so that we can support the older versions of IE. Because jQuery is very forward thinking, they drop support for everything. Again, it's driven by security in that we have to move, we have to upgrade. We wouldn't be dropping these if we didn't have to. But this version change will mean that, let's see if I've got a thing. We'll be dropping support for IE 8, 9 and 10, unfortunately. I'll come back to that in a second. We're also looking at our WCAG 2.1 AA compliance. There are some little bits and pieces of UI changes. We're going to send more details on those, because I think it would be well worth, if you have devolved it down to your content authors, they are going to notice some subtle changes, hopefully nothing that will make them feel too out of their depth. These are not completely new interfaces. It's a re-energization of the current interfaces. So they shouldn't need retraining, but it would be worthwhile warning them before one day they log in and see it's subtly changed. And again, these changes are not backwards compatible. So if you have done custom developments in the control center, particularly around Symfony, I'm not aware of anybody in this room who has, but if you know you have, it would be well worth planning in some time on your UAT system when the support team look to patch you with our 20.00 release or greater, to put time into making sure that those are compatible. There's a handout with further information in your pack. This is what it looks like. So if you have a dig around in there for this particular printout, that's got more details on what's going on. So these are our free versions. I do know from the stats that there is somebody still using IE7. Not just somebody, but there's a lot of. It's one organisation. I've not managed to track you down. Google won't tell me who you are. You know who you are. And there's at least 100 of your users using IE7. I would imagine of IE7 support was dropped quite a while ago, but it's probably working okay for the moment. I'm not sure how it's going to work going forwards. So heads up, if you know you're the one, it's time to upgrade them. So onto our roadmap. Standard disclaimer about plans that may change, but this is what our roadmap currently looks like for 2020. So we've got our version 20.0 release, which is the housekeeping and compliance, where we're looking at the end of this quarter being able to, tick our boxes for our WCAG compliance and our Symfony upgrade and jQuery upgrade. After that, we've got some work on our content portal product, which is kind of a mashup between XFP, CMS, and an integration with a document management solution provided by Perceptive. I think it's called Image now. The main things that are going to affect you guys that we'll be providing as part of this work will be around tools. If you're on Photon, tools inside the CMS to configure themes. So the same options that we offer in Galaxies Designer for configuring Galaxies will then be available to manage your sites actually in the control center, so the main site and the Galaxies, so that if you've got a theme that lets you change a logo, you can change it in the control center as a setting. And we're also looking at SAML authentication for front end and control center. So if that would come up with things like Shibboleth, and I think I've said that right, nobody correct me, and Azure as well. Azure authentication uses SAML. So that's the big kind of authentication out of the box. When we go into, we're getting a little bit more fuzzy, but late 2020, we're going to be looking at personalization and then also tentatively XFP support in Galaxies. So again, part of this theme of work of making Galaxies an equal partner, we want to be able to offer you guys the option to use XFP in your Galaxies, because at the moment it's limited to the main site. And we know that a lot of the organizations that are using Galaxies as their website provider would also benefit from being able to create forms and have their form submissions limited to their own staff, privacy and that sort of thing. You don't want form submissions necessarily being multi-tenant. And then we have our version 21, which was at the moment it's 2021, looking around integrations and new installers and new patches. So that's a long way off. I'm not going to talk about it very much because it's all very fuzzy. So I think from me, the big ask, if you don't mind, it's multimedia. So if you haven't already found this out, Adobe Flash support is ending on the 31st of December 2020. So if you are using the current version of multimedia in the CMS to host your videos, those videos are made available using the Flash technology, and certainly the IE browsers are looking at dropping support for that at the end of next year. Now, I think this is where I would really appreciate, I'm going to send out a customer survey to understand how you're currently hosting your video content and where you're storing your video content, and how we can then bring that into the CMS to offer a better solution going forward for you guys to provide video content on your websites. And there's elements around this as well in terms of WCAG 2.1 support and providing additional support for subtitling and other bits and pieces. I think it would just be, it's been a while since we've worked on this. The web has changed. I think people are much more, these days people expect videos and they expect video content on websites. The days of it being something that was bandwidth hogging and pretty much frowned upon to embed in your site, that's gone. People want videos. So it would be really useful if you could have a chat with me at some point. I'll be on the customer Slack system as well and sending out these links. Look out for it in your email. I apologise, you're going to get a lot of spam from me. Not spam, useful content. That was the end of my content, my slides. If you have any questions, please.
Any questions for Sarah and the CMS product? Over to you, sir.
Jim Granger, Liberator, working on the Bromley account. You talked about the menu manager. Is there any input into, obviously that drives the breadcrumb trail. Is there going to be any development in that? Because at the moment that reflects the taxonomy rather than the user's journey, certainly in our version.
I think there's no plans around, for example, taxonomal, I can't remember, polyhierarchical categories, which is where most of these issues come up. There's no plans at the moment to look at that, but for sure, that's an area of pain that we'd like to discuss more on, and how we can use Menu Manager to then help make those things better. Because definitely you're going to have an alternative view of your navigation. You're going to have a one-to-one relationship with items that would offer a better path for customers. So it's definitely an area of feedback. Find me and I will mine you for information about how we can kind of like fix these issues. I think certainly breadcrumb issues are something that I've heard people struggling. So yeah, I mean, that's definitely something where I think breadcrumbs, again, I think it falls in as well into this, accessibility theme of work and being able to find your way reliably and see the state of the content that you're in at any particular time. Breadcrumbs fall into that, and it would be well worth having a conversation.
Yes, hello. John Central Beds. A couple of things I wanted to mention. So on the video point, we use YouTube mostly, and we use YouTube's embed code. We're just using a snippet and pasting it in. We discovered this week that YouTube automatically adds a frame border equals 0 into its snippet code, isn't it? And that's actually flagged us up with some accessibility issues. So just as an FYI for anybody else using YouTube, you might want to strip that out if you're in bed. So another thing I think I've got a ticket open for it at the moment, not breadcrumb related, is around deleting pages. So we've had a few requests from our services to remove a page which is, say, 3 of 5, and I'm a bit concerned that the URLs will then automatically reflow, and therefore 4 becomes 3, 5 becomes 4, and so on. And obviously then breaking any links that we've got. And kind of thinking, if from an accessibility point of view, that doesn't sound like a good thing to me either. So I'm just wondering kind of what the thinking is, because obviously from our point of view, there's SEO connotations, there's potentially accessibility connotations. So I'm just kind of wondering what the plan is with that.
At the moment, it's something that I'm gathering kind of information on how many people are having problems in terms of, it's not just yourself who's come up with and spoken to me about this year, but we've not previously had anybody discussing it. So it's a new starter on the problem front. I think it would be useful to know, from my point of view, from the other people in this room as well, how often you're deleting pages and how often you're kind of like encountering a need for the multi-page document, so that we can then start planning tools on how to manage those going forward and what a better solution would look like. There's obviously SEO connotations to reusing these things, but there's also then the usability of, if you don't have a page 2, because we never reuse that ID, what happens to a customer who goes to page 2, and where should we navigate them to? Again, data, more data, please. Data.
Actually, I'd be open to a conversation about if we're even using it properly, because I guess it could be a two-way learning process there. So.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Any more questions for Sarah? One over here. Robert from South Northampton.
Hello. The events calendar, sorry, is something that we'd like to use a bit more often, but find it's a bit clunky in respect, because you need to know the location, or put the location in first, which is fine if you know it's something new, but otherwise you get halfway through setting up an event, find out the location's not in there, so you've got to go back and create that before then you go back and create the event. So I wonder if there's any way of creating the location at the same time the event is being created.
There isn't at the moment, but I think that's good feedback, and it's certainly something that I've noticed myself. So
Chicken and egg.
going forward, I prefer to be able to offer those options. It's definitely something that we'll look at next time that we look at that particular interface.
Okay, thank you very much, Sarah.
I've got
Well,
a
thank you.
Not in my